Emperor Vareth Ix sat upon the crystal throne of Ethoria and looked down at the messenger kneeling before him. The throne room stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Pillars of living light rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. 10,000 courtiers stood in perfect silence, waiting for their emperor to speak. The messenger was trembling. This was normal. Everyone trembled before Vareth Ix. "Say that again," the emperor commanded. His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "Your Majesty," the messenger said, his 4 eyes fixed on the floor. "The humans have not responded to your summons. The deadline has passed. They have not come." A ripple of whispers moved through the assembled court. Vareth raised one hand, and the whispers died instantly. "Perhaps they did not receive the message," suggested High Counselor Tith from his position at the Emperor's right hand. "These humans are a primitive species. Their technology is limited. The communication arrays may have failed." Vareth considered this. It was a reasonable explanation. In 12,000 years of imperial history, no species had ever ignored a direct summons from the Crystal Throne. The very idea was absurd. When the Empire called, worlds answered. This was the natural order of things. "Send another message," Vareth commanded. "This time, send it with an Imperial herald aboard a warship. Let there be no confusion about who is calling." The court bowed as one. The order would be carried out immediately. 3 weeks later, the herald returned. Vareth was taking his evening meal when the news arrived. He was dining alone in his private chambers, as he preferred. 300 years of rule had taught him that solitude was the only true luxury of power. Servants came and went silently, bringing dishes from 100 worlds. Vareth ate without tasting. Food had lost its pleasure long ago. "Your Majesty." The voice came from his chief attendant, who stood at the doorway with visible fear in his posture. "The herald has returned from the Sol system." "Good. Send him in." "Your Majesty." The herald did not return with a delegation. He returned alone. Vareth set down his eating implements. "Explain." "The humans received him, Your Majesty. They treated him with courtesy. They gave him food and drink. And then they sent him away with a message." "What message?" The attendant's voice shook. "They said, 'We respectfully decline.'" For a long moment, Vareth did not move. He had ruled the Empire for 3 centuries. He had conquered worlds. He had ordered the extinction of species that displeased him. He had watched sons die at his command. In all that time, no one had ever said no to him. "Decline," he repeated, tasting the word. It felt strange in his mouth. "They decline." "Yes, Your Majesty." Vareth rose from his table and walked to the great window that looked out over the capital city. Billions of beings lived below, all of them his subjects. Beyond the city lay a world. Beyond the world lay a system. Beyond the system lay an empire of 400 billion souls spread across 12,000 star systems. All of it answered to him. And somewhere out there, on a tiny world orbiting a small yellow star, a species of primitive beings had looked at his summons and said no. He should have been angry. He waited for the rage to come, the burning fury that had driven him to such heights of conquest. But the rage did not come. Instead, he felt something he had not experienced in a very long time. He felt curious. "Summon Lady Sareth," he said. Lady Sareth was the finest negotiator in the Empire. She had brokered treaties between species that had warred for millennia. She had talked rebellious worlds into surrender without a single shot being fired. She had convinced the Varati Confederacy to join the Empire peacefully, saving billions of lives in the process. Her tongue was sharper than any blade, and her mind was sharper still. She arrived at the palace within the hour, dressed in the formal robes of her office. She was old by the standards of her species, but her eyes were bright and alert. She had served 3 emperors, and she intended to serve 3 more. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing deeply. "How may I serve?" "You have heard about the humans?" "I have, Your Majesty." "A curious situation. I want you to go to them. I want you to find out what they want." Lady Sareth raised one eyebrow. This was as close to expressing surprise as she ever came. "Your Majesty?" "Every species wants something, Lady Sareth. Power, wealth, security, territory. The humans must want something. Find out what it is. Offer it to them. Bring them into the fold. And if they refuse again?" Morath turned to look at her. His eyes were ancient and cold. "Then I will know they are fools, and I will deal with them as I deal with all fools." Lady Sareth bowed again. "I will leave immediately, Your Majesty." She departed the palace that night aboard her personal vessel, accompanied by a staff of 50 diplomats and advisors. The journey to the Sol system would take 8 days through hyperspace. She spent the time studying everything the Empire knew about humanity. It was not much. The humans had been discovered by an Imperial survey vessel approximately 200 years ago. At the time, they had barely achieved spaceflight. They had primitive rockets and a few small stations orbiting their homeworld. The survey vessel had catalogued them as a pre-emergent species and moved on. Such species were common. The galaxy was full of young civilizations taking their first steps toward the stars. Standard Imperial protocol was to leave pre-emergent species alone until they developed sufficiently to be worth incorporating. Then a delegation would arrive, explain the reality of galactic politics, and offer membership in the Empire. Most species accepted eagerly. The benefits were substantial: access to advanced technology, protection from hostile neighbors, membership in a galactic community. The few that refused were persuaded through other means. But the humans had done something unusual. When the standard invitation was sent, they had simply ignored it. No response. No questions. Nothing. This in itself was strange. Most species leaped at the chance to communicate with advanced civilizations. The humans seemed completely uninterested. Lady Sareth found this fascinating. She found the rest of their file unremarkable. A relatively young species, only a few 100,000 years old. Carbon-based, bipedal mammalian. Average intelligence. Average aggression. Average in almost every measurable way. There was nothing in their biology or history that explained their strange behavior. When her vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, she understood immediately that the Imperial files were wrong. "By the ancestors," whispered one of her aides. The space around the Sol system was not empty. It was filled with structures. Orbital platforms. Defense stations, shipyards, mining operations around every planet and moon. And ships. Thousands of ships moving in careful patterns throughout the system. Lady Sareth stared at the sensor readings in silence. According to Imperial records, the humans should have had perhaps a few dozen vessels, most of them small and primitive. What she was seeing was a fleet. "How is this possible?" asked another aide. The survey was only 200 years ago. Lady Sareth did not answer. She was beginning to understand that the Empire had made a serious error. They had classified the humans as primitive because the humans had appeared primitive. But appearing weak and being weak were not the same thing. Her vessel was scanned 17 times before it reached Earth orbit. Each scan was polite but thorough. The humans knew exactly what she was carrying, including weapons that were supposed to be undetectable. They said nothing about them. A human shuttle arrived to escort her to the surface. The pilot was a young woman with dark hair and an easy smile. She chatted pleasantly during the descent, pointing out landmarks and explaining features of Earth's geography. She did not seem nervous at all. Lady Sareth had negotiated with species that conquered star systems. She had faced warlords and tyrants and beings of terrible power. None of them had made her feel as unsettled as this smiling young woman who treated her like a visiting friend. They landed in a city called Geneva. It was beautiful, nestled between mountains and a great lake. The air was clean and cool. Birds sang in trees that lined wide boulevards. People walked freely, going about their lives without fear. The humans took her to a building where the United Human Council waited. There were 7 of them, representing the various nations and populations of Earth. They welcomed her warmly. They offered her a hot drink called coffee. They asked about her journey. And then, politely but firmly, they refused everything she offered. Lady Sareth tried for 3 days. She used every technique she had learned in 2 centuries of diplomacy. She offered trade agreements that would make humanity wealthy beyond imagination. They declined. She offered military alliances that would guarantee their safety forever. They declined. She offered technology that could transform their civilization. They declined. "We have everything we need," they told her, again and again. "We simply wish to be left alone." On the 4th day, she returned to her ship and set course for Ethoria. She had never failed a negotiation before. She did not know how to explain this to the Emperor. When she stood before the crystal throne, she told the truth. "They don't want anything from us, Your Majesty. They have built their own civilization, their own fleet, their own defenses. They are not primitive. They are not weak. And they are not interested in joining the Empire." Emperor Vo. Fleet Admiral Corax had served the Empire for 140 years. He had commanded ships in 40 campaigns. He had burned worlds and broken fleets and crushed rebellions across 1,000 star systems. He was known throughout the galaxy as the Emperor's Hammer, the weapon that struck without mercy and without failure. When he received orders to subjugate the Sol System, he laughed. "Humans?" he said to his second-in-command. "We are sending the 3rd subjugation fleet against humans?" "The Emperor commands it," replied Vice Admiral Thro. "I know he commands it. I simply find it amusing. 800 warships against a pre-emergent species. It is like using a supernova to light a candle." But orders were orders, and Corax was nothing if not obedient. He assembled his fleet at the staging point near the Korath Nebula. 800 vessels of war, ranging from light destroyers to massive battle cruisers. Each ship carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Together, they could sterilize entire star systems. The journey to the Sol System took 12 days. Corax spent the time reviewing tactical plans, though he did not expect to need them. His experience told him that the mere appearance of the 3rd Fleet would be enough. Species that had never seen Imperial warships often fought. Species that understood what they were facing always surrendered. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol System, Corax was standing on the bridge of his flagship, the Varth's Judgment. He had positioned the fleet for maximum visual impact. 800 ships arranged in perfect formation, weapons charged, ready for war. He expected panic. He expected frantic communications begging for mercy. He expected the humans to finally understand their situation. What he got was silence. The human ships were there, just as Lady Sareth had described. Thousands of them, spread throughout the system in defensive positions. But they made no move. They sent no messages. They simply watched. "Scan them," Corax ordered. The sensor officer worked her console. "Admiral, I am reading approximately 3,000 human vessels. Most appear to be military. They are heavily armed, but their technology appears to be significantly inferior to ours." Corax nodded. This was expected. No young species could match Imperial technology. Their numbers were impressive for such a civilization, but numbers meant nothing against superior firepower. "Open a channel," he commanded. "Channel open, Admiral. Attention, human vessels. This is Fleet Admiral Corax of the Imperial 3rd Subjugation Fleet. You are hereby ordered to stand down and surrender your system to Imperial authority. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. You have 1 hour to comply." He waited for a response. It came quickly, but not in the form he expected. A single human ship broke from the defensive formation and moved toward the fleet. It was small, barely larger than an Imperial shuttle. It approached slowly, broadcasting a signal on all frequencies. "They want to talk," said the communications officer. "Let them talk." The human ship stopped at a respectful distance. A recorded message began to play. A human woman appeared on the view screen. She was middle-aged, with gray hair and calm eyes. She spoke in clear, measured tones. "Admiral Corax, we have received your message. We acknowledge your presence in our system. We have no quarrel with you or your fleet. However, we will not surrender. We will not submit to Imperial authority. We ask that you withdraw your forces peacefully. This is your only warning." The message ended. The human ship waited. Corax stared at the view screen. Behind him, his bridge crew shifted uncomfortably. This was not how subjugation usually went. Species begged. Species threatened. Species made desperate offers and pathetic defenses. They did not issue warnings. "Your only warning," Corax repeated. He found himself smiling. "They warn us. 800 warships, and they warn us. Admiral?" Vice Admiral Thrall was watching him carefully. "They are brave. I will give them that." "Stupid, but brave. Order the fleet to advance. Standard conquest formation. Let us show these humans what a warning really looks like." The 3rd Subjugation Fleet moved forward. The Sol system was large, as star systems went. The distance from the outer boundary to Earth itself was considerable. The fleet advanced at cruising speed, making no attempt to hide or maneuver. There was no need for tactics against an inferior enemy. Let them see what was coming. Let them understand. They crossed an invisible line. Corax did not know it was there. No sensor had detected it. No warning had indicated it. But the moment the fleet passed that point, everything changed. Space itself seemed to split open. Ships emerged from nowhere. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They appeared on all sides, above and below, in front and behind. They rose from hiding places that should have been impossible. They dropped out of some form of stealth that Imperial technology could not detect. In 3 seconds, the 3rd Subjugation Fleet was completely surrounded. Corax gripped the arms of his command chair. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The tactical display had become chaos. Red markers filled every portion of the screen. Enemy ships were everywhere. "Admiral," shouted the sensor officer, "I'm reading over 12,000 vessels. They're armed. They're targeting us." "That's impossible," whispered Vice Admiral Thrall. "Where did they come from?" Corax did not answer. He was staring at the view screen, at the wall of ships that surrounded his fleet. They were not the primitive vessels he had expected. They were sleek and angular, covered in weapons arrays that hummed with barely contained power. And they were everywhere. His tactical officer's voice cut through the noise. "Admiral, every ship in our fleet is being targeted. Multiple locks per vessel. I'm counting over 60,000 weapon systems aimed at us right now. Shields?" Corax managed. But Admiral, they're weapon signatures. They're like nothing in our database. I don't know if our shields will hold." The communications console lit up. Another transmission from the humans. This time, it was live. The same woman appeared on the view screen. She was sitting at a desk, looking directly at the camera. Behind her, Corax could see other humans working calmly at various stations. No one seemed alarmed. No one seemed afraid. "Admiral Corax," she said. "My name is Director Chun. I speak for the United Human Council. I trust you can see your current situation." Corax found his voice. "I see that you have been hiding your true strength. A clever deception. But deception will not save you. Imperial technology is superior to anything you could have developed. You cannot defeat us." Director Chun nodded slightly. "You may be right, Admiral. Our technology is different from yours. We have had 200 years to study your empire, to learn your capabilities, to prepare for this moment. Perhaps your shields will hold. Perhaps your weapons are stronger than ours. Would you like to find out?" She paused, letting the question hang in the air. "I have done the calculations myself, Admiral. If we fire, your fleet will be destroyed in approximately 4 minutes. Some of your ships might survive the first volley. None will survive the second. 800 vessels. 120,000 crew. All dead. In 4 minutes." She leaned forward slightly. "We would rather not. We have no desire to kill. We simply want to be left alone. Withdraw your fleet. Return to Imperial space. Tell your Emperor that we are not his enemies, but we will never be his subjects. Do this and everyone lives. Refuse, and we will do what we must." The transmission remained open. She was waiting for his answer. Corax looked around his bridge. His officers were pale. He could see fear in their eyes, real fear, the kind that came when warriors realized they were not the predators, but the prey. He had seen that fear on the faces of countless enemies. He had never expected to see it on the faces of his own crew. He looked at the tactical display. 12,000 ships. 60,000 weapons. 4 minutes. He was not a coward. He had faced death many times. But he was also not a fool. Dying for honor was one thing. Dying for nothing was another. "Admiral," Vice Admiral Thrall said quietly, "they let us see all of this. They wanted us to know. They could have destroyed us without warning, but they chose to give us a chance to leave." Corax understood. This was not a threat. This was a lesson. "How?" he said, his voice hollow. "Reverse course. Take us out of the system. Best possible speed." No one questioned the order. The third subjugation fleet turned and ran. The human ships did not pursue. They did not fire. They simply watched as 800 Imperial warships fled like frightened animals. Corax stood on his bridge and watched the Sol system disappear behind them. He had never retreated before. He had never lost a battle. He had never felt so small. When they finally entered hyperspace, he went to his private quarters and locked the door. He sat in darkness for a long time, thinking about what he would tell the Emperor. The humans had not just defeated him. They had defeated him without firing a single shot. They had shown him exactly how powerful they were and exactly how powerless he was. And then they had let him go, like releasing a captured animal back into the wild. He understood now why Lady Sarath had been afraid. But she had been afraid for the wrong reasons. She had feared what the Empire would do to the humans. Corax now understood the truth. The question was never what the Empire would do to the humans. The question was what the humans would choose to do to the Empire. When the third subjugation fleet arrived back at Ethoria, Corax went directly. Spymaster Vren had served the Empire for longer than most species had existed. He had been ancient when Vorath IX took the throne 3 centuries ago. He had been ancient when Vorth's father had ruled before him. Some whispered that Vren remembered the founding of the Empire itself, 12,000 years ago. No one knew if this was true. No one dared to ask. His title was simple. His power was not. Wren controlled the Imperial Intelligence Network, a vast web of spies, informants, and surveillance systems that stretched across every world in Imperial space. Nothing happened in the galaxy without Wren knowing about it. This was his purpose. This was his burden. When the Third Subjugation Fleet returned in defeat, Wren was not surprised. He had been watching the humans for a very long time. He requested a private audience with the Emperor. Such requests were rarely granted. The Emperor's time was valuable, and Wren's reports usually came through official channels. But this was not a usual situation. Vorath received him in the deepest chamber of the palace, a room that existed on no map and appeared in no records. The walls were lined with ancient technology, devices that blocked every form of surveillance and communication. Whatever was said in this room would remain between them alone. "You have something to tell me," the Emperor said. "Something you did not want anyone else to hear." "Yes, Your Majesty. I have information about the humans. Information that changes everything. Speak." Wren stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His body was frail, but his voice was strong. "Your Majesty, the humans did not develop their capabilities recently. They have been preparing for contact with the Empire for over 200 years. Since before we officially knew they existed." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Explain." 217 years ago, an Imperial survey vessel passed through the Sol system. Standard procedure. The vessel cataloged the humans as a pre-emergent species and moved on. However, the humans detected that vessel. They analyzed its signals. They studied its technology from a distance. And they realized what it meant. They knew we were coming. "Yes, Your Majesty." They did not know when. They did not know in what form. But they understood that somewhere out there was a civilization far more advanced than their own. A civilization that would eventually come to their world. Wren paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "And so they prepared. For over 2 centuries, the humans have been building toward this moment. Every decision they have made, every resource they have spent, every life they have dedicated has been aimed at one single goal: being ready when we arrived." 200 years, the Emperor murmured. "All of it in secret. They are remarkable, Your Majesty. In 200 years, they went from primitive rockets to a fleet that rivals our own. They developed technologies we do not fully understand. They unified their planet, ended their internal conflicts, and directed their entire civilization toward preparation. All without us noticing. All while appearing to be exactly what we expected them to be, a weak, primitive species not worth our attention. The appearance of weakness was intentional." "Yes, Your Majesty." "They wanted us to underestimate them. They wanted us to ignore them. They needed time, and our dismissal gave them that time." The Emperor rose from his seat and began to pace. This was unusual. Vorath IX was known for his stillness, his absolute control. Wren had never seen him pace before. "Why?" the Emperor asked. "Why go to such lengths? Why not simply surrender when we came? Submission to the Empire is not death. Countless species thrive under our rule. We offer protection, technology, membership in a galactic community. Why would they choose confrontation over cooperation?" Wren had been waiting for this question. He had been dreading it. "Because they knew what we truly are, Your Majesty." "What do you mean?" "They watched us. For 2 centuries, they watched. They intercepted our communications. They studied our history. They observed how we treated the species under our rule." Wren's voice became very quiet. "They saw the Thessari, Your Majesty. They know what happened to them. The Thessari." The name hung in the air like poison. 50 years ago, the Thessari had attempted to rebel against Imperial rule. It was a minor rebellion, poorly organized, quickly contained. But the Emperor had decided to make an example. The Dazari homeworld was burned. Not conquered. Not punished. Burned. The entire species was reduced to a few scattered survivors, refugees hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy. The humans documented everything, Ren continued. They have records of the bombardment. They have testimony from survivors. They know about the labor camps on Korra 7. They know about the forced relocations on Thason Prime. They know about the cultural erasures, the forbidden languages, the disappeared populations. They judge us, the Emperor said. They fear us, Your Majesty. And they have decided that they would rather die than become what the Dazari became. What so many species have become under our rule. The Emperor stopped pacing. He stood with his back to Ren, staring at the blank wall. Is there more? Yes, Your Majesty. There is one more thing. The most important thing. Ren took a deep breath. In all his centuries of service, he had never been so afraid. The humans have not only prepared their own defense, they have prepared a counterattack. The Emperor turned slowly. During the past 200 years, while we ignored them, the humans sent ships throughout the galaxy. Small ships. Undetectable ships. They planted weapons platforms in orbit around our most important worlds. Silent. Waiting. Automated systems that require no crew, no support, no supply lines. Ren met the Emperor's eyes. There are human weapons orbiting Ethoria right now, Your Majesty. They have been there for over a century. They are pointed at this palace, at this city, at every major population center on this world. The silence that followed was the most complete Ren had ever experienced. You are telling me, the Emperor said slowly, that the humans could destroy our capital at any moment. That they have been able to destroy it for over 100 years. And they have chosen not to. Yes, Your Majesty. Why? If they hate us, if they fear us, why not strike? Why not destroy us before we could threaten them? I do not know for certain, Your Majesty, but I have studied them. I have tried to understand how they think. And I believe it is because they do not want to. They do not want to destroy us. No, Your Majesty. They want to be left alone. That is all they have ever wanted. They have the power to end our empire. They have had that power for longer than anyone knew. And they have chosen, again and again, not to use it. The Emperor was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different. The anger was gone. The pride was gone. What remained was something Ren had never heard from him before. It was fear. If this is true, if they could destroy us whenever they wished, then why tell us? Why reveal themselves at all? They could have continued hiding. They could have waited until we forgot about them. Because we forced their hand, Your Majesty. We sent the summons. We sent the fleet. We pushed them into the open. But even now, even after we threatened them, they are trying to give us a way out. They let the Third Fleet leave. They showed us their power and then let us go. They are offering us a choice. Yes, Your Majesty. They are offering us the chance to walk away, to accept their independence and live with it, to have peace. And if we refuse, if we send the Grand Armada as I planned, Ren's voice dropped to barely a whisper, then they will destroy us. Not because they want to, but because they will have no other option. And they will win, Your Majesty. They will win because they have been preparing for this war for 2 centuries, and we did not even know they existed until last year. The Emperor sank back into his chair. He looked, for the first time in Ren's memory, old. Not ancient and powerful, just old and tired. Leave me, he said. Ren bowed and withdrew. As he walked through the silent corridors of the palace, he thought about what he had just done. He had told the Emperor the truth. The complete truth. He had not softened it or shaped it for political purposes. He did not know if it would make any difference. The Grand Armada was already assembling. Ships were arriving from every corner of the Empire. The largest military force in 12,000 years of history, all of it aimed at one small system orbiting one ordinary star. In 3 days, the Emperor would give the order. The fleet would launch, and then the fate of the galaxy would be decided. Vren returned to his chambers and sat alone in the darkness. He had done everything he could. He had given the Emperor the information he needed to make the right choice. But he had served Varath Ix for 300 years. He knew the Emperor's pride. He knew what pride had driven the Emperor to do in the past. And he was very much afraid that pride would drive the Emperor to do something very stupid indeed. In his mind, he saw the weapons platforms orbiting Euphoria. Silent, patient, waiting. The humans had given them a chance. A choice. Vren prayed that the Emperor would make the right one. But he prepared quietly for the possibility that he would not. The Grand Armada gathered above Euphoria like a storm made of steel and fire. Ships came from every corner of the Empire. Battlecruisers from the fortress worlds of the Outer Rim. Carriers from the industrial systems of Decor. Destroyers and frigates and support vessels by the thousands. All converging on the capital world for the greatest military operation in Imperial history. 50,000 warships. 300 million soldiers. Enough firepower to crack planets, boil oceans, and burn civilizations to ash. The full might of an empire that had conquered the galaxy for 12,000 years. All of it aimed at one small system where a young species had dared to say no. Emperor Varath Ix stood on the observation deck of the Imperial Palace and watched his armada take shape. The ships filled the sky like stars, a second heaven made of metal and power. He had built this force. He had called it into being with a single word. And with another word, he would send it forth to crush the humans who had defied him. This was what it meant to be Emperor. This was the power that had built the greatest civilization in galactic history. And yet, for the first time in 3 centuries, Varath felt doubt. Spymaster Vren's words haunted him. The weapons orbiting his own world. The 200 years of preparation. The choice to let the Third Fleet live. None of it made sense if the humans were simply a young species defending their territory. This was something else. Something he did not fully understand. He had not slept in 3 days. He had not eaten. He had simply stood here, watching his armada grow, trying to decide what to do with it. Your Majesty. The voice came from behind him. High Counselor Tiff, his oldest and most trusted advisor, stood at a respectful distance. What is it? The armada is assembled. Fleet Admiral Korax reports that all ships are ready. They await only your command. I know. Your Majesty, the commanders are concerned. You have delayed the launch order for 3 days now. There are whispers that you are uncertain. Let them whisper. Tiff hesitated. In 50 years of service, he had never seen the Emperor like this. Varath the Ninth was decisive. Varath Ix was absolute. Varath Ix did not hesitate. Your Majesty, may I speak freely? When have you ever done otherwise? Tiff moved to stand beside the Emperor, looking out at the armada. I have served you for half a century. I have watched you make decisions that shape the fate of worlds. I have never questioned your judgment. But I must ask, what troubles you about this campaign? Varath was silent for a long moment. They could have destroyed us, Tiff, at any time in the past century. They had weapons pointed at this very palace, and they did not fire. Why? Perhaps they feared retaliation. From who? If they destroyed our capital, killed our leadership, crippled our military infrastructure, who would retaliate? The Empire would collapse into chaos. We would be too busy fighting each other to fight them. Then perhaps they are weak. Perhaps their weapons are not as powerful as they claim. No, Korak saw their fleet. He is the finest military mind in the Empire, and he believes absolutely that they could have destroyed him. He believes they showed him only a fraction of their true strength. If Korax believes it, I believe it. Tiff considered this. Then perhaps they truly want only what they say they want. To be left alone. That is what troubles me. The Emperor turned to face his counselor. Every species wants something. Tiff, power, territory, revenge, security, something. But the humans want nothing from us except absence. They do not wish to conquer us. They do not wish to destroy us. They do not even wish to join us. They simply wish to be left alone. Is that so strange? It is unprecedented. In 12,000 years, no species has ever asked only for independence. There is always something more. But the humans, he shook his head. They had the power to become the rulers of the galaxy. They chose instead to hide. They had the opportunity to destroy us. They chose instead to warn us. They had every reason to hate us, to fear us, to strike first. They chose instead to offer us peace. Your Majesty, surely this is proof of their weakness. A truly powerful species would not hesitate to use its power. Or perhaps it is proof of their strength. Perhaps only the truly powerful can afford to show mercy. The words hung in the air between them. Your Majesty, Tiff said carefully, the Armada is waiting. The Empire is watching. If you do not act, if you do not demonstrate imperial strength, there will be consequences. Other species will see weakness. There will be rebellions. The unity of the Empire could fracture. I know. Then the choice is clear. We must attack. Must we? Vorath turned back to the window. Tiff, I have ruled this empire for 3 centuries. I have conquered worlds. I have crushed rebellions. I have ordered extinctions. And in all that time, I have never once asked myself if I was doing the right thing. Power was its own justification. Victory was its own morality. And now? Now, I stand here looking at the greatest armada ever assembled, and I wonder if sending it will be my last mistake. Not because we might lose, but because of what winning might cost. A chime sounded. An incoming transmission, marked urgent. Answer it, Vorath commanded. Tiff activated the communication system. A holographic image appeared before them, projected from the main display. It showed a human woman, the same one who had addressed Admiral Korax during the confrontation. Director Chun of the United Human Council. Emperor Vorath, she said. I apologize for the intrusion. I know this transmission bypasses your security systems. I wanted to demonstrate that we could reach you directly without your permission whenever we chose. Please understand this not as a threat, but as proof that we are speaking honestly. Vorath stared at the image. You have remarkable technology. We have had 200 years to develop it. Your Majesty, I know you are preparing to attack. I know your armada is assembled. I know you feel you have no choice. You know a great deal. We have watched your empire for a very long time. We understand how it works. We understand the pressures you face. An emperor who shows weakness does not remain emperor for long. Then you understand why I must act. I understand why you believe you must act. But I am here to tell you that you do have a choice. You can let us go. One system. Out of 12,000. Why does it matter so much? Director Chun's expression softened. Because it is our home. Because we built our civilization there. Because our children were born under that yellow sun, and their children, and their children. Because it is ours. Everything in this galaxy is mine. The stars themselves belong to the Empire. Do they? Or is that simply what you have told yourself for so long that you believe it? Vorath felt anger rising. You dare to lecture me? You, whose species was throwing stones 10,000 years ago. I dare because I must. Your Majesty, we have studied you. Not just your empire. You personally. We know your history. We know what you have done and why you have done it. We know that you are not a monster. You are a ruler who has made the choices you believed were necessary. Some of those choices were terrible, but you made them because you thought they were the only way. You know nothing about me. I know that you did not burn the Thessari homeworld for pleasure. I know that you did it because you believed it would prevent greater bloodshed. I know that you have spent the past 50 years wondering if it was worth it. The Emperor was silent. We have watched you, Your Majesty. We have seen the reports that cross your desk, the decisions you agonize over, the nights you spend alone staring at the stars. We know that the burden of empire weighs on you more heavily than anyone realizes. We know that you are tired. Stop. I am not here to judge you. I am here to offer you something no one else can offer. A way out. A chance to make a different choice. Let us go, and we will never threaten your empire. We will never support rebellions or foment unrest. We will simply live in our small corner of the galaxy and build our own future. And what of my authority? What of imperial unity? If I let one species defy me, others will follow. Perhaps. Or perhaps they will see an emperor strong enough to choose peace when war would have been easier. Perhaps they will see wisdom instead of weakness. Director Chun leaned forward slightly. Your Majesty, we could end your empire tonight. We have weapons pointed at every major world you control. We have contingencies you cannot imagine. And we are choosing right now to offer you peace instead. Not because we are weak, but because we believe that even empires can change. She paused. Prove us right. The transmission ended. The holographic image faded. Vorath stood alone with his counselor, the armada glittering above them like a promise of destruction. Your Majesty, Tiff said quietly, what will you do? Vorath did not answer. He stood at the window for a long time, watching his ships, thinking about choices and consequences and the weight of 300 years. Then he made his decision. He walked to the communication console and activated the Imperial broadcast system. Every ship in the Armada, every world in the Empire, every being under his rule would hear was about to say. This is Emperor Vorath Ix, he said. By Imperial decree, I hereby recognize the Sol System as sovereign territory, independent of Imperial authority. The human species is granted permanent autonomy. No Imperial vessel shall enter their space without permission. No Imperial authority shall extend to their worlds. He paused. The Grand Armada is hereby disbanded. All ships are to return to their home stations amid news spread across the galaxy like fire. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 cities, beings of every shape and form heard the Emperor's decree. The humans had refused to submit. The Emperor had sent his fleet. And then, impossibly, incredibly, the Emperor had let them go. The Sol System was free. No one knew quite what to make of it. For 12,000 years, the Empire had been absolute. Species joined or they were conquered. There was no third option. And now, suddenly, there was. The first reactions were disbelief. Surely there had been some mistake. Surely the Emperor had some plan, some strategy that would become clear in time. He would pretend to accept the humans' independence and then strike when they lowered their guard. That was how the Empire worked. That was how power worked. But days passed. Then weeks. The Armada remained dispersed. The Imperial border near the Sol System stayed quiet. Human ships were seen for the first time in neutral space. Small trading vessels carrying goods and greetings, and the simple message that they came in peace. Disbelief gave way to wonder. On Thesan 7, a refugee camp held the last survivors of the Thesari species. 3,000 beings huddled in prefabricated shelters on a frozen moon, all that remained of a civilization that had once spanned 17 worlds. They had lived in this camp for 50 years, forgotten by the galaxy, waiting to fade away entirely. When news of the Emperor's decree reached them, an old Thesari woman named Keth walked out of her shelter and stood in the cold wind. She remembered her homeworld. She remembered the fires falling from the sky. She remembered running through burning streets, carrying her daughter, watching everything she had ever known turn to ash. For 50 years, she had believed that defiance meant death, that the Empire was invincible. That hope was a luxury the conquered could not afford. Now she stood in the wind and wept. They said no, she whispered. They said no, and they survived. On Koroth 7, deep in the mining tunnels where conscript workers dug precious metals for imperial factories, a young man named Torvis heard the news from a guard who had been drinking. The humans had refused the Emperor. The humans had built a fleet in secret. The humans had faced the Imperial Armada and won without firing a shot. Torvis had been born in the mines. His parents had died in the mines. His children, if he ever had any, would die in the mines. This was his life, his fate, his eternal punishment for the crime of being born to a species that had resisted imperial rule 3 generations ago. But that night, as he lay in his narrow bunk, he thought about the humans, about what they had done, about what it meant. If they could say no, perhaps others could too. It was a dangerous thought, a forbidden thought, the kind of thought that got people killed. He thought it anyway. On Verati Prime, in the grand halls of a species that had surrendered peacefully 2,000 years ago, the Council of Elders gathered to discuss the news. They had done well under imperial rule. They had prospered. They had risen to positions of influence and respect. Many of them believed sincerely that submission to the Empire had been the right choice. But now they looked at each other with something new in their eyes, something that had not been there for 2,000 years. The humans were younger than us, said Elder Mathrin, the oldest among them. They had less technology, less experience, less time, and yet they are free, said Elder Senna. They prepared, said Elder Mathrin. For 2 centuries, they prepared. They knew what was coming, and they built something strong enough to resist it. We could have done the same. Yes, we could have. The elders were silent, thinking about choices made long ago by ancestors who had believed there was no other way. It is too late for us, said Elder Mathrin finally. We are part of the Empire now. Our fate is tied to its fate. But our children, said Elder Senna, our grandchildren, perhaps their fate does not have to be the same. It was a small thought, a quiet thought, but it was there, planted in the minds of the elders like a seed waiting for water. Back on Ithoria, Emperor Voreth IX had not appeared in public since his decree. He remained in his private chambers, attended only by his most trusted servants. Rumors spread through the court like disease. The Emperor was ill. The Emperor was dying. The Emperor had lost his mind. None of the rumors were true. Voreth was simply thinking. For 300 years, he had ruled through strength, through fear, through the absolute certainty that the Empire could crush any opposition. That certainty had shaped every decision, every policy, every war. It had been the foundation of his power. Now that foundation was cracked. He had let the humans go. He had shown the galaxy that defiance was possible. He had demonstrated publicly and irrefutably that the Empire was not invincible. There would be consequences. He knew this. Rebellions would come, uprisings, demands for independence. The galaxy he had held together through fear would begin to fragment. And yet, standing at the window of his private chamber, Looking out at the stars he had claimed as his own, Varath found that he did not regret his choice. The humans had shown him something. Not just their power. Not just their preparation. They had shown him what strength looked like when it was not used. They had the ability to destroy the Empire. They had chosen mercy instead. For 3 centuries, Varath had believed that power meant conquest. That strength meant domination. That the only way to rule was through fear. The humans had offered him another way. He did not know if the Empire would survive the changes that were coming. He did not know if he would remain emperor when the dust settled. But he knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that he had made the right choice. Mercy was not weakness. Restraint was not surrender. Sometimes the strongest thing a ruler could do was choose not to fight. Far across the galaxy, in the Sol system, Director Chun stood on a balcony overlooking the city of Geneva. The mountains were catching the last light of sunset. Birds were singing in the trees below. Children were playing in a park across the street. Their laughter carried on the evening breeze. She had not slept in days. She had stood at the center of humanity's greatest crisis, facing down an empire that could have destroyed them all. And somehow, impossibly, they had won. Not through war, not through destruction, through patience, through preparation, through the choice to offer mercy to an enemy who had never shown mercy to anyone. A young aide approached her. "Director, the Council is asking for you. There are reports coming in from across the galaxy. Other species are reaching out. They want to know how we did it. They want to know if we can help them." Chun smiled slightly. "Tell the Council I will be there shortly." The aide nodded and withdrew. Chun stayed on the balcony a moment longer, watching the sunset. She thought about the generations who had sacrificed for this moment. The scientists who had worked in secret. The soldiers who had trained for a war they hoped would never come. The leaders who had made impossible choices. They had built something extraordinary. A civilization that had looked at the galaxy, seen its cruelty and its injustice, and decided to be better. Not through conquest. Not through domination. Through the simple, powerful choice to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. The humans had not defeated the Empire. They had done something more important. They had shown the galaxy that the Empire could be defied. That freedom was possible. That one species, alone in the dark, could build something strong enough to stand against anything. The ripples from that revelation were already spreading. The old order was crumbling. Something new was being born. Chun did not know what the future held. She did not know if the other species of the galaxy would find their own strength, their own freedom. But she knew they would try, because they had seen the humans do it, because they knew now that it could be done. That was the gift humanity had given the galaxy. Not technology, not weapons, not power, hope. The sunset faded. The stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with ancient light. Somewhere out there, on 1,000 worlds, beings were looking up at those same stars and wondering what else might be possible. Chun turned and went inside to meet her council, to begin the work of building a future no one had imagined. Behind her, the stars burned on, patient and eternal, watching as the galaxy slowly, painfully, wonderfully began to change. And on a distant throne world, an emperor sat alone in the darkness, looking at a star map where one tiny system glowed with a different light than all the others. The Sol system, independent, free. He had given them that freedom. He had made a choice that would transform everything. Emperor Varath IX did not know if history would judge him wise or foolish. He did not know if the Empire would survive the chaos to come. But as he sat there in the darkness, watching that small bright point of light, he felt something he had not felt in 300 years. Peace, whatever came next. Whatever consequences followed, He had finally done something he could be proud of. He had chosen mercy. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, was learning what that meant.